Not only is it a brand new season for all of iRacing, tonight kicks off the latest in one of PCA's most popular virtual offerings. That's right, it's time once again for the PCA Sim Racing Series 12. Tonight, the Club Class, and you'll see it all live here on RaceSpotTV. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth tonight is Ewan O'Leary. Behind the scenes, our director, Hugo Luis Kallman. Now, last night we saw, Ewan, it is very tough to try and get track position here. Passing is at a premium, and I kind of expect tonight to be the same thing. Yeah, the qualifying session we're about to see is going to be the key of the day, I think, and getting that pole position in the end didn't give the race victory away. However, it did certainly give us a very good idea, and it made sure that we could have an interesting race. Certainly in the first part of the race, it was an exciting sort of tense moment, and then towards the end we found out who the winner was, obviously through the pit stops. It was a good race last night, hoping for more of the same. So as we get ready with qualifying here, let's take a quick look at the track map and see what exactly is going on with this very technical circuit. Yeah, it's, of course, Birmingham, Alabama. It's 2.5 miles-ish, but the real key is going to be down in towards turn 5. That's where we saw most of the overtaking last night. That downhill run, as long as you've got that good run off of turn 2 and 3, then you are in the money as far as getting an overtake done down turn 5 goes. It is possible to remain side by side on the way towards turn 7 and 8, but that gets very awkward very quickly. Saw a couple of incidents through the S's last night as well, through turns 9 and 10, and then through 11 and 12 as well. That can get pretty awkward. A couple of incidents through there last night gave a couple of penalties away, actually, but hoping that there'll be a bit less of that today. And there were 1 or 2 chances to overtake at turn 14 as well, but turn 5 is the real the real passing point. That's where we'll expect to see most of the moves this evening, most of the few moves relatively that we're going to see. Currently, of our first few laps that have come through in qualifying, Kevin Jokel has the provisional pole. It's close, much like we saw last night, with about 0.08 of a second between P1 and P2. This is Dean Chapman, who we're riding on board with currently in the 610, sitting in the 8th position. He's coming up towards that, what is becoming an infamous corner here down at Charlotte's Web, where so many drivers seem to struggle to get the car woed up and turning the right way. Yeah, I mean, downhill braking zones, I've always said this, are really difficult to get right, even if they do look pretty normal. I mean, that's dead straight, and it has been for a while by the time you're at that point of the circuit. So it is difficult when you're going downhill. It does make overtaking, well, not likely, but it does make it more likely than it is around the rest of the circuit. And then you get into the rest of the challenge of this circuit over the curves at turn 9 and 10. That was a bit wide, and that was an off track, which we did see a bit of yesterday in qualifying. We heard from Kevin Sandiego, who was really displeased with himself after only getting 1 clean lap in. His second 2 both had 1Xs, and that of course means your lap is invalid. Exactly, and that could have cost him a good chance at trying to take the victory. It seemed like he had the pace, just couldn't put it all together and get up to the front when he needed to. But today, Peter Sigourney has now taken over that top spot as Dean Chapman crosses the line, and it looks like this second lap was definitely discounted for him. So that off track did indeed cost him, and it looks like he's off on his 3rd lap. So unfortunately, that's it for his qualifying. D. Chapman 17th at best, and we still have almost half the qualifying left to go as we watch Michael McKinney down through Museum Corner. Yeah, this is the final lap now for McKinney. It's the final lap, actually, for everybody who's relevant in this session as far as it goes. The top 10 all on their final laps at the moment. The top 19 at the moment, all within a second. Improving the most, I would say. Maybe Lenny Holland has got a good chance of moving up towards the front here from 5th position in the number 68. John Gibson going pretty well as well, but there's quite a lot of improving going on out there at the moment, to be honest. It's unlike what we saw in the pro session yesterday, where actually the session the times were fairly static other than Michael Polsek towards the end. There goes Holland over the line first and sets the marker for everyone else to beat. And he's got 0.3 of a second, almost 0.4 of a second over the nearest car. For the third and final lap for McKinney, he does improve, but he gets shuffled back to fifth almost immediately. Fernandez also goes quicker on his final lap, but he winds up in seventh. It is an absolute slot machine out there right now as drivers are tumbling around, trying to figure out where they're going to wind up. All we're missing currently is Steve Komatz and Rick Reinsberg have not set a time. I do see Steve heading out on track right now, so he should have time to at least get a lap in.
How's Mario Gonzalez going quite close in the 777? He goes 1/10 behind. Was on pole for a short while in that session, but Lenny Holland looks like the pole sitter to me after that. At the moment, the top, goodness me, what is it? Almost all of the drivers, in fact, have completed their time. So Steve Komatz will be one of the drivers we can watch in the final few minutes, because he's one of the only drivers who didn't go out there immediately. It seems that everybody in the Porsche Club of America iRacing series multiple go out pretty much immediately, and then the last few minutes is just for waiting for the most part.
Yeah, they're not here to dilly-dally. They want to make sure they get those laps in, because we have to remember, with this style of qualifying, they don't get to finish hot laps. So once those 10 minutes are up, that's it. So might as well get it out of the way as quickly as possible, just in case you run into some issues. Steve Komatz, I'm not sure if he's on an out lap here or if this is a flyer, but we'll find out within a few hundred feet.
Yeah, it's the first lap for Komatz, so where's this benchmark going to put him? Don't expect to see it right up there on pole immediately, and it's 25th for the moment, but he'll just begin to wind it up a little bit. He's only going to get one more lap, which is not particularly ideal, but the one advantage you do have when you're going out late like this is that he knows exactly what he needs to do here. He knows that pretty much everybody else in the field that he's going to set times have already done so, and so the drivers he'll be aiming to be near, or the position that he's aiming for, whichever one he has in mind, he'll know exactly the time that he requires to actually achieve that.
Right now he is showing pretty good on this second lap, about 2 to 3/10 quicker as my timing and scoring is showing, and he's the only other driver that can set a time from here. Everybody else has either completed their laps or isn't out on track, even if they do have any left. We do have Chris Sherburne, but he has already completed all of his laps, and he's practicing his pit entry. We found out yesterday that actually is quite important here.
It is. Who was it who went straight on? Robbie Prescott, was it?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, I think so, if my memory serves me. It was only 24 hours ago, but I've already forgotten. It was an entrance to pit lane that went slightly wrong, I'm afraid, just braking slightly too late and going nose on into the wall. It cost a 9th position in the end for Prescott, unfortunately. As over the line goes Komatz, this will be the final time that we see in this session, I would have thought, and it is an improvement up to 8th place, so it just shows you how you can wind up the car, if you like, and just go quicker and quicker with your 3 laps. If you are one of those drivers who needs a few qualifying laps, then don't expect that first one to be anything like what your representative pace is. That's a decent time.
I mean, a massive improvement. He was sitting in 25th before that second lap, and we can't stress enough as he spins on the third one, which doesn't matter since this lap wouldn't have finished anyways, but we can't stress enough that having that track position is going to be key here today. We saw it last time. It's possible to overtake, but especially when you get to the sharp end of the field, drivers are very much going to have a hard time trying to make passes out on track. It might come down to your pit stops. With everybody done, that takes us to our qualifying order while we wait for the warm-up to go through, and it's Lenny Holland on our pole position, the number 68. Kevin Jokel will start from P2 and the number 11 with Mario Gonzalez, and the 777 starting P3. Ian Simon will begin from 4th today. Michael McKinney, good enough for a top 5. He'll be flanked by Peter Sigourney in the 6th position. You've got David Fernandez starting in 7th. On the outside of row 4, it's Steve Komatz. Then it's Terrence Tong starting 9th, with the top 10 rounded out by Pierre Coomer. John Gibson will start at 11th. And of course, Ewan, we've got Julian Velez finishing up our top 12.
Yeah, Richard Woodcroft is in 13th ahead of Mark Lacombe. Then it is Kim Frick in 15th place, ahead of Robert Lacroix in 17th. Jeremy Hall alongside Robert Neville, and then we're getting to those drivers just over a second off of pole. David Glenn 19th ahead of Scott Bowers. Dale Green just outside the top 20 alongside Mike Matson, and row 12 made up of Lee Binkley and Dean Chapman.
Takes us to P25 where Ben Leung starts. You've got Andrew Elsom next to him in 26. Adam Gerling starts in the 27th spot. Patrick Adamczyk starts 28th today. Then you've got J.R. Gregory in 29th and James Martin in 30th. Just a couple more cars to wrap up the field with Ward Preston starting big first, Chris Sherburne 32nd, and David Palmer in 33rd. So a few cars shy from what we saw last night, which was a 37 driver field. So it's not a whole lot smaller, but at least a tiny bit so. And it did seem like lap traffic played a minor part in things. We even talked a lot about how if drivers start to catch that tail end of the field, Ewan, before the pit stops, that's something they need to keep in mind on when they come in.
Yeah, and actually it turned out that the pit window was a lot wider than I expected in that race last night. So actually we could be expecting a pretty wide pit window here as well, which could be very interesting if we do see that traffic early on. Are we going to see a leader be brave and pit in early? I still think it would have been a decent call, although in the end I don't think anyone was faster than Michael Polasek, and no matter what you would have done, unless you'd have stayed in front of him literally the entire race, and I think it would have been very difficult for anybody to beat him, actually, because of the speed that he had. By the way, Robbie Prescott, a good afternoon to him, or evening indeed, in YouTube chat. He's already asking us to forget about last night's pit entry and his self-admitted skill issue. But so I apologise for bringing that up immediately. But you know, he's unfortunately that's the thing that everyone will be trying to avoid. If they were watching last night, they'll be thinking, "Don't want to do what he did."
Exactly. You give us a touch point, it's hard not to talk about it, unfortunately. But hopefully nobody else does fall victim to that. And again, this is just warm-up that you're currently watching, so this has no bearing on the race itself. Now, normally, we usually see incidents going down into turn 1 here on lap 1, or often we'll see them into Charlotte's Web, turn 5 across the hill. But yesterday it was here along the backside of the course and then through the tunnel turn on the first lap that we had issues. So I'm kind of curious if there'll be a repeat of that, or if the drivers were watching yesterday and are going to keep their heads on a swivel for those corners.
I feel like lap 1 yesterday was a bit of an anomaly, really, in the way that it worked. Everyone getting through turn 5 and then not through the rest of the lap. That's what you, or the opposite of what you normally see. So I was surprised by yesterday, actually, in that respect. You know, and it's a credit to the driver, actually, that they got through turn 5 on lap 1 quite so well, but it was on the back straight where things started to go wrong. And actually there wasn't really that much in the way of opening lap incidents even then. You know, there were a few involved, but maybe 5 or 6 overall, but actually it's a lot better than it could have been. So it's a credit to the pro drivers, of course, but if there is going to be trouble on this opening lap, I would expect it to be turn 5. I wouldn't expect a repeat of yesterday.
Indeed, and let's not forget that it did wind up in penalties for both incidents that we saw on the first lap. So the stewards are always watching race control, has their eyes out and about, and don't want to give DJ up in race control any reason to send you down the pit lane in extra time. That is for sure, as we watch them go over the tunnel turn that we were talking about up onto the final few corners, the never-ending carousel to wrap it up before you switch back downhill to the left-hander through 16 and off across the line. Just a few seconds left. Hopefully, these drivers have got their setup ready to go and good for the race. I don't think we've quite mentioned it yet. This is another of our open setup classes.
Yeah, the last one, indeed. This week it's open setup series is multiple, so pro and club. And then when we get forward to next week, and we're doing the other classes of sport and challenge, they of course are fixed setups, and by the way they use high downforce setups for the most part, so that will really help them around here especially, but just helps keep those cars a little bit more controllable than maybe they otherwise might be. Other things to note, 60% fuel limit, although it wasn't much of a limit actually last night. 45 minutes for the most extravagant drivers as far as the opening stint went. And of course that pit stop, which is not, I suppose, necessarily mandatory, but we would be absolutely gobsmacked if anybody didn't make one.
As you can see on the screen, if you want to check out any of the socials and keep up with PCA Sim Racing, you can use /PCA Sim Racing for any of the socials you see on your screen. Now, you know, not just with the fuel situation, but just how the race played out in general. We got a lot of information last night, Ewan. Watching what we did, has anything changed on what you feel like is the keys to the race today? Is there a different opinion, or is it the same as last night?
I still think track position is very important, but actually I think what I'll be looking at tonight with even more heightened importance is the pit stop window, because I did think it was going to be important, but actually I think it was absolutely vital in Michael Polsek's win. His in-lap must have been extraordinary. We didn't see it, but it must have been absolutely unbelievable, because he came out with an advantage I wasn't expecting. Get your pit stop time down and get your in-lap right, and you could be on your way to a win.
About 87 Fahrenheit or 31 Celsius on the track right now. And we did hear the drivers say it was a tad slippery out there, which is surprising because that's pretty good conditions. Drivers checking up a bit here at the start. They got to watch out about moving out of line as the green flag is out. This time, pole position gets a very good start. Lenny Holland is going to be able to pull ahead. A battle for second behind them as Ian Simon tries to take it away from Jokel, but can't quite get it out of his grasp. They're good through turn one. Now they head through the Alabama roller coaster.
And Mario Gonzalez, after qualifying third, did not really even take up his position properly in the field, and so it left loads of car lengths on the table. He's already fighting down for sixth position now, even to hang on to sixth position. They dive down the hill into turn 5. Do they all make it through cleanly for the second night in a row?
So far, so good. Back of the field. Oh, there are a few cars back there that we can't see on screen that unfortunately have had issues, but we're all ready to Museum Corner. Now coming down through the hill, somebody going very wide there. That looks to be Peter Sigourney. Gathers it back up in that blue and yellow machine. It would be lucky if he didn't get a cut course penalty.
Yeah, but it looks like he's got away with it. He just lost a bit of time, to be honest. On the way down the back straight, they'll go now. By the way, I think it was David Glenn who was most caught up in that opening incident at turn 5. He's a few seconds off the back of the field.
We'll try and catch back up. As if you're going to have a problem, have it early. Now you've got the entire race to try and make up for it. Still Lenny Holland leading this race, and another big look on the inside of Sigourney as it's Steve Komatz there trying to make some moves. Mark Lacombe, unfortunately, off the course and falling down the order. Didn't see what happened. Somebody facing backwards. It is Mark, actually. Excuse me. That was a different car we were looking at. He barely sneaks across the track.
It's an awkward place to find yourself on the inside of turn 14, but maybe not the best way of rejoining. In all honesty, he was caught up with someone else as well. I couldn't identify the car that was getting away slowly and going around the outside there through the final corner. But there's a couple of things to have a look back on of the opening lap, and we will do when it calms down a little bit. But a little bit more, well, is it more chaotic than last night? It's just sort of the same, really. Couple of little incidents here or there, but nothing catastrophic for this race. Everybody, for the most part, is still going okay.
It was David Fernandez in that orange and blue machine we saw trying to recover. He's down in 18th and already working to try and fight back as side by side coming up through the S's. That's Ian Simon and Kevin Jokel. We've mentioned last night, that is not usually a place that you want to try and go wheel to wheel.
No, we saw an incident there last night right from the very opening lap of the race, and we didn't see very many battles go well there through turn 9 and 10, so they back out of it again. But all this is allowing Lenny Holland to extend a margin. This is more like what you'd expect to see from a pole sitter. I know the pole sitter eventually won last night, but it wasn't like this, stretching out an early margin. This is what happened down at turn 5, by the way. Mike Matson coming to a complete stop to avoid it.
And didn't make out who that green car was. I think it was David Glenn, potentially. Yep, here it is. And he just, he gets tipped to the side. The 172 is prone. There's nowhere he can go. He's right up to that inside wall. And then there's the contact between Mark and Fernandez.
That was not good from Mark Lacombe, I'm afraid. He was diving down the inside and was never going to make that corner. Ben Leung spun pretty much on his own there, I'm afraid, at turn 5, and that's one of the most awkward places to find yourself stopped as well. A bit like Lacombe. Oh, goodness, that's a scary rejoin, but I believe he got away with it. He's way down now in last in the field. Thankfully, everybody has stayed out the pit lane so far, but one or two incidents in those opening couple of laps.
Ironically, Leung was right next to Fernandez in that replay there, so Fernandez avoided getting caught up in at least another one for the time being. As we once again hit the back half of the course, Mario Gonzalez giving chase on Steve Komatz just ahead of him. This is a battle for 5th position.
Yeah, so Komatz, of course, with that late qualifying lap, got himself into 8th, but he's continued to go through the field in these opening 5 minutes. Mario Gonzalez, the one who has dropped back most in the top 5 through that opening lap. In fact, he's the only one in the top 5 who's not there anymore after qualifying in 3rd position. So not a good start for him at all. But what happened on the front straight was just bizarre from him, really. Lined up 3rd. Ideally, you want to be directly behind the race leader and as close as you can to the race leader. And of course, it would have been especially good news because Holland had a good start in the end. But Gonzalez, for whatever reason, just let 2 or 3 car lengths go. And he effectively started on the back foot sort of his own doing. It was really bizarre.
Somehow he was left napping. I'm not sure if he just didn't get the message about the green flag or wasn't paying attention, but it cost him here at the start. As we saw last night, even if you lose just 1 position at the start, sometimes it can be hard to try and claw that one back. So far, still has been unable to get by Steve Komatz just in front of him in that dark-colored machine.
Oh dear, Kim Frick is dropping down the field, I'm afraid, and this is why. Just a bit of over-exuberance on the power on the way out of turn 5, and not the last time, excuse me, we're going to see someone hit the front end on that wall on the left-hand side out of that corner. That's a pretty common mistake.
Hopping on board with Mario, he's getting very close to the back of Steve now, who's trying to keep up with Peter Sigourney. We've already seen some cracks in his armor, so this could get interesting. In fact, he's starting to go on the attack instead of the defense, but he has a bad exit coming off the final turn. That's not going to give him any good opportunities down to turn 1.
Yeah, it's going to be very difficult to get through at turn 1 anyway, and Gonzalez goes wide. Oh, he's missed the apex at 1. He gets back on in time for 2, but here comes Peter Kummer looking at the inside, but won't get alongside on the way through turns 2 and 3. Michael McKinney just in behind as well, and there's in fact a very long group back here for another 5 or so drivers. Here comes McKinney, later on the brakes, but not quite late enough after looking up the inside.
Shows you just how tough it is to try and pass. That's really your most ideal spot. He was awful close and could not get the overlap down to the apex. Had to give way to Peter Kummer in front of him. Still a lot of racing left to go in this one, but we've got quite a train forming. This is all behind Peter Sigourney, who is in 4th at the front of this, but they're starting to stack up a bit.
They're starting to stack up a lot here, and it's partly been created by the fact that Sigourney had such a shaky start. Qualified well, of course, but a couple of times on that opening lap went wide. I believe down in towards turn 5 the first time around. Certainly we saw him go off at turn 7 and 8, jumping the chicane, and we were surprised that he didn't get a slowdown. But since then, he's lost that time and he's not really been able to recover it. And actually what he's been creating is a long group behind him. He's not been under so much pressure himself, but there are lots of little battles within this group that are very close indeed as they go over the line single file again.
And Julian Velez currently in this yellow and black machine being chased by Terrence Tong for the 9th position. We have had a couple penalties handed out. Dale Green for an orange zone violation. Now the orange zone is a section of track at the start of lap 1. Oh, as we got a pass down to the inside, Ian Simon has to try and do the slide job to make it happen, but takes both of them out. Unfortunately, it's his rival that gets the worst of it. That's Kevin Jokel off the course.
Well, Joker's going to be pretty furious about that, I think, after getting dived on the way towards turn 5. Simon basically went off himself, to be honest, with the braking zone there. He completely missed his marker, then trying to get the power down too eagerly on the way out of turn 5. He slid straight into Joker, and that may well add to your penalty list there you were reading out.
Exactly. So the orange zone is basically an area where if you cause an incident or make contact or have a mistake, you get punished extra hard. Maybe just a little bit too hard on the throttle coming off. That sent him into the 11 there. So that's what happened with Dale Green's penalty. Mark Lacombe, black flag for causing an incident that we saw in the replay. And then Dean Chapman, black flag for a self-spin that caused an accident. Not sure if we had witnessed that one or not, but he's going to have to head through pit lane in a moment.
I think he's already in pit lane. I don't know whether he's serving that penalty. He's been in for 2 minutes now, so I don't think we've seen that one, but there's been quite a few of those small little spins going on towards the back. I think this might be it. It is indeed. Looks up the inside, and that is very clumsy indeed, I'm afraid.
And very similar to what we saw from Mark Lacombe. Who was that ran into him there? That was a bit unfortunate from them. It is a bit blind coming around that corner, especially if you're coming in wide.
Yeah, it is, yeah, and it doesn't matter whether you can see him or not, to be fair. If he's in the middle of the road, parked the wrong way, it's not a great sight, whether you can see him or not. So it's, I'm afraid, was always going to involve contact if the cars were as close as they were in that group, just behind Dean Chapman. I think the hit he took to his front right suspension has taken some repairing as well. He might have escaped back to pit lane shortly after that and taken his fast repair, because after 2 minutes and 9, he re-emerges in last place.
So we come back to our mid-pack once again, very much putting the pressure on here late in the lap. This is between Coomer and McKinney once again, and Coomer's going to cover the inside into the penultimate turn as McKinney tries to set him up onto the main straight, but just so difficult to try and outgun your opponent coming around that last left-hander. That's been multiple times now. We've seen drivers who look like they might have a go and just can't get the speed.
It's difficult to do it around here. You've got to be fast in the right places, and I'm afraid if you're not, then you've got trouble. And you need to be fast on the way out of turn 3, so you can have a go at turn 5. Looks like Coomer might well have that opportunity here. Looking up the inside in the sort of lighter blue. Mario Gonzalez in the 777 with the bright orange rear wing, not quite getting overtaken on this occasion. He stays 5th position, but they're all still behind Peter Sigourney. It's now for 3rd place, of course, because we saw Kevin Jokel dropping behind them all, but the same train remains.
A few cars less, so credit to Sigourney, because, I mean, yes, it seems like he doesn't have speed compared to those behind him, but he's got the thing that they want, which is that valuable track position. So for now, Komatz, Gonzalez, Coomer, McKinney, they're all just going to have to wait patient, hope for maybe a mistake from the car ahead, or maybe play the pit strategy game.
Yeah, that's what it's going to take here, and we're not too far away already from pit window being open. You can make a very early stop, as we found out last night, so especially if you're fuel saving, and maybe that'll be the plan now in this group as well. We're 10 minutes in, and so we're starting to get into that settled race situation again here. And so fuel saving may well become the order of the day. I actually downplayed fuel saving yesterday before we talked to the drivers themselves, because I thought it's one of those circuits where you're not using a lot anyway. So didn't someone say last night you basically don't use any fuel at all? Obviously that's not quite true, but you know, you get the point. They don't use very much at all, and I thought as a result of that the savings you can make are actually quite diminished, but that's not the case as it turns out. You can save a little bit in one of these groups, and maybe that's what some of these guys in this group for 3rd place will resign themselves to now.
And I wonder if that's what Polasek did last night, and maybe there was a few drivers that are kind of taking a page from that book. Now, the interesting thing about all this, though, is if anybody does try to do that early stop, I just checked, I think only really 20th on down you can find some clear air. Otherwise, I mean, look at behind these cars. There's no real gaps. If you pit now, you are coming out in traffic.
Oh, we'll look down the inside. Well, it depends how much time you think they're going to lose, to be honest, in the pit stop. We know that around 10 seconds, just less than 10 seconds, is ideally what you want to lose when you're stopped. The pit lane is not actually very long, so yeah, I'd be surprised if you lose more than 30 seconds or so. And you're right, for these guys in the top 10, losing 30 seconds would be probably the worst thing that could happen to them in this race. They would come out about 29th or so, with the next 10 within 6 seconds or so. But Ian Simon's in already.
Oh, well, he's actually serving a black flag.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, so that was for an incident. I hadn't reported on that one quite yet, but he beat me to it, apparently. He's going to be in and out and be down to 17th position. For those wondering, it's about 21 seconds from cone to cone, as he gives us that information tonight. But that is just from cone to cone. That doesn't tell us what the bogey time is that he loses in terms of the lap.
Yeah, it's something that people often forget is that you don't lose 21 seconds because you've driven down the pit lane for 21 seconds. You are still travelling at a speed, even if you're travelling at a slower speed than those on the circuit. So what would that be, about 16 seconds? I'm going to guess they maybe a bit less than that. So that's what you lose driving down the pit lane, then actually stopping for about 10 seconds. So yeah, maybe 25 seconds lost is a pit stop around here, and that's not a lot at all. You need the race to spread out a lot more if you are one of these drivers in the top 10, but equally I don't think you need to leave it 45 minutes like they did last night.
Jokel back in the wars once again. Lacroix and Neville just behind him as they come through the last couple corners, nose to tail essentially. We've been seeing a lot of these trains both last night and tonight. You get very stuck behind a car if you are of either close pace or unfortunately even a relatively quicker pace. It seems like you can have a hard time trying to get that pass done. Turn one, certainly not an easy place to do it, so he doesn't try anything, at least for now. Maybe setting himself up for the exit of 3 like you mentioned earlier, Ewan. This is actually pretty good. He's right on top of him.
It's okay. It's going to take some bravery on the brakes, this, if he wants to make the move. It wasn't a perfect exit off of turn 3, and there you go. He might have forced Lacroix into a mistake, though. That was not a great line into turn 5. He's missed the apex a bit, but I think Neville followed him slightly, and so missed the apex as well. And they will stay 11th and 12th in that order, but good to see that Kevin Jokel making up some places again. He's back inside the top 10 now. You'd imagine it's going to be a race of recovery. Maybe second place is still attainable for Jokel. I mean, the lead that Lenny Hollander's got is quite large, and doesn't look like anybody's going to be crossing that margin, but everyone's at the game for second.
Very different from what we witnessed yesterday, at least at the start of the race. Holland, like you said, 7 seconds between himself and P2 right now. And Jokel, for those who are curious, is about 11 seconds behind Holland. So really, everybody from P2 down is still very, very close together as we watch the onboard for Neville.
So I'm just marvelling at the setup here. Do connect, by the way, if you are a driver in the next week's races, especially. We didn't get to see anybody's setups last night, so do connect if you are a driver. Triple screen for Robert Neville, which is, I wouldn't say going out of fashion, but it's not the ultra wide has become more popular these days. But it looks like a triple screen to me, with an added screen on top for good measure, for whatever that's for.
It looks like maybe he's either got some data or something. Maybe he's streaming himself, apparently, as he, oh man, late on the brakes coming in to Charlotte's Web compared to Robert in front of him, but still it's not enough. He gained quite a bit of ground hitting the binders into there. He'll keep that in mind later on if he gets any closer than that.
Yeah, you've got to be very careful on the way down there. You can very easily get yourself into the back of the driver in front of you, so need to be careful. Be sure in your own braking points and just stick to them. Got very close on the way out of turn 8 there, but nothing doing here through the S. Is going to be very difficult indeed to make anything happen, but we mentioned earlier that Sigourney was maybe putting the pace on a little bit and thinning out the group. Well, that's not really lasted very long. There's now 11 cars in the train again here from 2nd to 12th.
Now, interestingly, I think we may have had our first taker with an actual scheduled pit stop, Adam Gerling, but he did take his free repair. So I wonder if he had some damage that he needed to take the spare car. And it was only 6.8 seconds, which is pretty darn short. So if that's all the fuel that he took, I am a little sketchy on whether or not he'll be able to get to the end.
Yeah, it's about 2/3 of what you need, really. So unless he's doing some monstrous savings fuel-wise, then that'll be shorter than... I don't believe anyone made a short pit stop like that and made it to the end. People doing 8 seconds.
8.2 was the slowest.
Okay. Yeah, 1.4 slow, quicker than that. Ooh. I'd be nervous about that, to be honest. Although there are only 42 minutes to go, but you know, it's difficult to work out the maths on that one. I think there'll be fuel saving required there, if not another pit stop entirely.
I'm with you on that one. So we'll keep an eye on Gerling, see if maybe he's got something up his sleeve, if he is pretty good on saving fuel or not. Mark Lacombe is also going to pit early. Wonder if that is another deal of a driver having damage, needing to get some repairs. We're going to watch from Michael McKinney, another driver that's signed up and showed us his perspective. Actually, very pretty looking setup. We've got the lit up LED keyboard and a very nice rim on his wheel with that triple screen setup, but unfortunately all dressed up and no place to go with no way by the car ahead.
Yeah, I like the wheel, but unfortunately it's got those lights are a bit much, really. need your sunglasses, to be honest, to go in there. But anyway, I know people are a fan of what they call LED sort of. Whatever.
I meant RGB. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the acronym I was looking for. Yeah, yeah. But anyway, yeah. I like the wheel, and at the moment it matches quite nicely the Porsche Cup wheel, which for these days, because everything's got so modern in the world, the wheel's not even round anymore. Where has the world gone?
Yeah, not running that old school wheel, but you definitely need buttons on it, regardless. Of what you're running in sim racing, because even if it is an old school car, as we go side by side coming down into the braking of Museum Corner, Jokel's going to take the spot away. That's brave into that chicane.
What was even braver, I would say, is Robert Leclerc trying to go round the outside, and he's coming back again on the exit of turn 8. This would be quite something, and they get took back into line again. Goodness me, that was pretty brave from the both of them. Still yet to see two drivers successfully go side by side through there, to be honest. But anybody on the outside on the way before turn 7 is just so scared by the potential consequences that they generally back out, as Leclerc just did.
Yeah, if you're smart, you're probably going to give way because, like you said, it tends to cause an accident. And this is the club class. We haven't gotten to talk about it, but they have 5 different classes technically: the entry, challenge, sports, club, and then pro. We watched the pro last night. This is the second highest with club. So these are drivers that are definitely getting pretty darn serious with it and just need to make that one step up. Is this back to Fernandez? Yes, it is indeed. Battling for 14th place with Julian Velez, and he's got a very good run coming up over 4.
Oh, doesn't Velez know it as well? Immediately defending on the way towards turn 5, and Fernandez is going to have the long way round. That's going to be very tricky indeed, and so has to tuck back into line again. That's exactly what I'm talking about with the run-off of turn 3 and turn 4, I guess, as well. You need to be quick off of there so that you don't give yourself too much work to do on the brakes, but Velez was very wise to that. Fernandez may be a victim of his own success. He was so close that Velez had almost no choice but to defend on the way down the hill there.
And that is what cost him in the end. The 09 sticking with him. He's already had a bit of a bad day, winding up, unfortunately, kind of getting taken out of what it was a good position. Started from 7th, and at the end of the first lap, it was with Lacombe that kind of set him sideways and fell down, it looks like maybe about 8 positions, because that's where he is currently. As we go side by side between McKinney and Coomer. We were watching this fight before. Now we hop back on board once again. Let's see if he can stay cool. Unfortunately, it's not going to last very long as he has to give way.
Yeah, Terence Tongue was getting quite close on the way towards turn 1 as well there, but he couldn't make his way through, and so stays 6th place at least as Michael McKinney, but would have liked 5th, to be honest, on that occasion. There's Tongue looking up the inside, not quite able to do it. Is it a bit of an homage maybe to that IMSA GT3 car with the teeth? I forget what it's called, the pink one.
Yeah, I can't remember. I always remember the green one is Rexy, and
I've forgotten.
I'm sure there's Corey at iRacing is going to be so sad with me because he's got them all down to a T at this point. Meanwhile, Terence Tong kind of watching as the 2 cars in front of him have started to battle a little bit, and I think it's probably wise that they don't fight for very long, because as we've seen, it's hard to keep up pace going wheel to wheel around this track for too many corners, and anybody behind you is going to be desperate to try and make some moves.
Yeah, they are. And what I've noticed actually as well, I just want to make a comment on turn 14 here. It's the first chance we really got to ride on board with someone through the final sector here with Terence Tong. Yesterday, oh, and that's very wide for Peter Kuma, and maybe this is what McKinney was waiting for last lap around. He's going to go through now and towards turn 1, surely, if he's brave enough, and he does. And realising that immediately, Kuma just backs out, doesn't try to go around the outside, instead looks back up the inside at turn 2. Doesn't quite happen on this occasion, and so we do have that change for 5th place, maybe 1 lap behind schedule.
And just to illustrate my point, Terence Tong is now suddenly right on top of Peter. In fact, he's going to try and make a move as well. He's going to get down to the inside. He gets chopped off at the nose with no room to spare between the two cars. And now that brings Richard Woodruff into the mix.
Yeah, it does. Along with John Gibson, Kevin Jokel not too far away either. This gap is starting to grow between this battle and the group for 2nd place as well, which has been headed by Peter Sigourney for such a long time. These are the kind of things that create gaps, and as entertaining as it is, it may not be the best thing for these guys' individual races, because what they're seeing is the podium positions go up the road. But what a great battle. Kuma there knew exactly the length of that Porsche Cup car, because otherwise he was going to spin around and Tung was going to be involved in it as well. Great awareness, though, to take the apex just when he knew that he could. He knew he just had about enough space to do that.
Just the utmost trust in his competitors on top of things that he put that down at the apex at the last moment, on board with John Gibson here in 9th place, up 2 from where he started. Unfortunately for him, Kevin Jokel's in behind, who has lost 8 positions. Ooh, that's a little wide there from Terence Tong. Not sure if he's trying to size this one up or if he's just missed his apex a bit.
Yeah, it was all pretty awkward through those lines, through turns 2 and 3. Down in towards 5 they go again, and it's a lot more single file this time, a lot more orderly than last lap around. John Gibson says there, part of Rally Sport region. I don't even know what that means.
Search me on that one. I could not tell you where that is supposed to be in the U.S. I'll hit up Race Control, see if they got information, since they were the ones that helped me or confirmed things for me last night. Oh, and off he goes. Terence Tong buckled under the pressure and falls outside the top 10. Ooh, he's going to spin it around. Okay, he's going to get started without going back into the racing line.
I think he's got damage, though, isn't he? Or was that just the way that the car was spinning around again off of the corner? I think there's suspension damage on that front right. Well, I'm maybe not so convinced, actually, of that, but certainly damage in terms of position. And it'll be pretty damaged himself mentally after that one. Let's have another look at it. Just when you start to feel the car getting away from you, you just know that it's going to be very difficult to get back again. And Terence Tong, unfortunately, does hit the wall quite hard with the front right there. Doesn't decide to come into pit lane, so clearly there isn't damage, or at least it's not too bad. But he is down to 15th place.
You might think, oh, it's a Porsche. If he hits the nose, it's fine, right? Well, you have to remember the radiator's still there, and you don't want to damage the splitter, especially on a track like this, where any little bit of downforce in front grip will be key. Julian Velez versus David Fernandez. We were watching these two battle a little bit earlier, and deep onto the brakes, Fernandez practically pushing him through the corner, but still is not able to attempt to pass.
Will there be any bravery here at turn 7? You know that if you've got the inside line, you've got the position, but it's surely a bit outlandish to do that. Velez knew that there was pressure, so broke late himself, and he did secure the place for at least another couple of corners by doing so. But look at some of the gaps up ahead of them here. Jeremy Hall is only a second up the road, and then they've got 5 seconds up to the group for 2nd place, effectively. So you'd think if they just bang some heads together here, they might be able to catch up those guys and start challenging for positions in the top 10, and not just this battle for 12th position, which is what this is effectively.
Oh, Mario Gonzalez is in. So this is one of our front runners. This is not expected. Typically, most drivers try to run as long as possible. It is at the halfway point, which, if you're going to split the race evenly, and some drivers do prefer to do this, it's about the time to go. But the 777 is going to pull the trigger.
I don't mind this call. Came in about 12 seconds behind the race leader. If we're going with my bet of 25 seconds lost, that will put him 37 seconds behind the leader. and that will give him a bit of a gap. There's a bit of a gap between Mike Matson and Chris Sherburn of 9 seconds, and if he can just slot himself in there, he will be absolutely golden. Let's see, as he makes his way out in 19th place, Chris Sherburn's coming, but he's not coming anywhere near quickly enough, and he's played a blinder here. Mario Gonzalez has gone a little bit long on the pit stop time. 12 seconds is a bit longer than he would have hoped for, but he's in clean air, and that could give him a path to second place.
Ooh, side by side coming down to Museum Corner. Fernandez unfortunately can't get that one to stick either. So Velez will fight another day. And yeah, my goodness, Gonzalez was paying attention because that was a perfect gap. I don't know if he had a track map up and kind of knew what the timing would be, but whichever the case, it's worked a treat for him.
Now, that's the kind of thing that I almost think, you know, he's got someone working for him as a race engineer to do that. I can't believe, if he's done that through his own intuition while driving at the same time and figuring that out, then I will take my hat off to him multiple times, because that is unbelievable if he's done that on the fly. It's so unbelievable, I'm inclined to believe someone's done it for him, because surely he can't have that brain capacity and be driving at the speed he was at the front of the race at the same time.
Going to have a lot of brain capacity here, will Julian Velez, because the attacks are coming thick and fast now from David Fernandez. Just, I mean, he is trying everything he can. The kitchen sink being thrown at things right now, but Fernandez is unable to get by yet. Maybe David's also one that should start thinking of trying to pit as well.
Yeah, everyone will be now. I think once you see a front runner coming in like that, in such a high-profile way, everyone starts to think about it. David Palmer's in, for example, a bit further down for a scheduled pit stop as well. So they're very much in the minority, the stoppers in the first half of the race, but they will start to kick things off for the rest of the, well, not the rest of the race, but the next 15 minutes, certainly. They will start to kick things off, especially if you're in a group like this. You know, relatively small, but you're struggling to work your way through. If you're a David Fernandez here, you've had a few laps at going through or trying to, might be worth coming into pit lane. But then again, you do have to think about where you're going to come out, and that could be troublesome for certain drivers, depending on where you're placed in the field.
This is all 3-4 position Jeremy Hall at the front of this trio. They've caught him pretty quickly as well. Don't know if he made a mistake. Is he also thinking about pit lane? He certainly was going wide there, but no, they're all going to stay out at least for this lap. That brings us to lap 22 of this race, and we're officially past the halfway point as well.
Yep. Yeah, we certainly are. I was going to say something earlier on about turn 14, but some racing interrupted me. I've been taking some different lines tonight compared to yesterday. I don't really know what it is, but the lines they're taking tonight, very much yesterday, indicated to me they're coming into pit lane, because they go very narrow through 13, stay narrow for the first part of 14, so they can dive straight into the pit entry when it comes around eventually as you're going around the carousel. But here they're very much taking that narrower entry to 14, sort of triangling off the corner a little bit, but yesterday was sort of a wider arc into the 14th corner for some reason. So it's an interesting difference in the type of lines that, you know, the real top pros make, and we certainly saw some of those yesterday. And then, you know, you get that level below that here in the club race. It's very interesting that there's such a pronounced difference in line night to night.
And I think it goes to what you said, where just drivers who are maybe at that little bit higher skill level, because I was thinking to myself, that looks a lot more like my line here tonight. And definitely, I'm always usually a little afraid to go wide, like we're seeing with Fernandez here, trying to open up the corner. And I'm sure it's scary thinking maybe you'll go out on the marbles, that you'll have the grip on that higher line.
Yeah, certainly for people like us, we wouldn't be taking those wide arcs, playing dicing with death with the grass, that's for sure, because that's something that always used to make me really nervous when I used to drive as well. It used to be a circuit that you'd really have to think about that a lot, and I can't remember what it is, but there are plenty of sort of occasions like that where the pros will take it right out to the grass every time, because they know where they're going and they know what they're doing. But you know, for everybody else, it's a pretty scary prospect to really arc out the corner like that. Meanwhile, Jeremy Hall defends onto turn 5. That was very late on the brakes, and round the outside for Velez. Will he get it to work though through turn 7? Doesn't look like it.
Velez is going to be under attack now. He stays slightly defensive, and a late move from Fernandez to show himself down to the inside. It's not going to happen for him. And Velez is already back on the attack. He is very fast right now. I get the sense that Julian is the quicker of these two cars at the front of this group.
Yes, I think so. But then again, it's a problem with overtaking. It's difficult around here, although it's actually been pretty good so far tonight in terms of overtaking. We've seen plenty of it, but it is tricky when, especially you get into this knocking on the door of a top 10 stage, which is what these guys are at, although they are 6 seconds away from the top 10 all of a sudden now. He's exactly the kind of driver here, Velez, where I'll be encouraging to come into the pit lane. There's not too much traffic around where he would come out. He'd be in between Dale Gregory and James Martin, as far as I can work out, and there's 9 seconds in between those two. I think it'd be worth a stop, but then again, if you're in this race on your own, you don't have someone telling you what to do, when to pit and where you're going to come out, then it's difficult to know that you're going to pit and be in clean air when you're just driving.
Exactly. It's so difficult to try and do a sim race on your own, much like it would be in real life, just kind of running blind. And that's why you have a lot of virtual assistants and data coming your way. You'll see drivers like we saw earlier with a fourth screen showing them information so that they can kind of make those decisions if they have the brain power to try and think about that stuff. This is Kevin Jokel, who is kind of torn between defending on Neville behind him, and at times he gets close to Gibson in front of him in the red and white to try and take that 7th place away, but is a little bit more on the defense right now. Just a heads up on the pit situation. Gonzalez is still our highest car to have pitted. He sits in 19th, but we're missing a good majority of the field, probably about 2/3 of the field still needing to take a stop.
Gonzalez is going to really start to hope that people start pitting in front of him soon, because he is catching the likes of Patrick Adamczyk and also Mike Matson. So 1.5 seconds currently the gap. We'll be hoping they both come in very shortly. Velez all of a sudden is under a lot of pressure here with David Fernandez, Terence Tong, and now Scott Bowers, who's also joined in here. So all of a sudden Jeremy Hall is okay, but the battle's really for 12th. As look at this down the inside for Fernandez. Wasn't quite convinced enough that he was going to make that move, and so sort of half-heartedly gets down the inside. That's not going to get him anywhere. And now Tong is alongside him through turn 3.
Oh, I thought Tong was going to be able to make that pass stick. That worked out really well for Fernandez. Oh, no! He came together, comes back across the track, and almost hits Tong. But that was a massive hit for Julian Velez, who was trying to defend. And did I see somebody off into the gravel there on the outside as well?
Certainly saw a front-end bodywork panel, so I don't know what that was all about, but that was a humongous hit for Velez. Goodness me, that was a hard hit, and thank goodness it's a sim race, because that was extraordinary. Just the way that the wall jutted out for a little Marshall's inlet there meant that he came face to face with basically a head-on, well, not a head-on crash, but sort of a side-on crash with a very immovable object. Here it is again, but I mean, he's totally been pushed around there, Velez, and look at that, the way that the wall just juts in. He has a very, very hard hit. That'll have some damage, that 33 Porsche now, I'm afraid. And it wasn't any of his own doing. I think Fernandez is going to land himself in some trouble for that.
Yeah, the natural racing line does take you across, but he didn't really leave him much of a space. And this is Andrew Elsom, and this would probably explain why. Oh, yep, there's the body parts that we witnessed.
Like a gymnast across the floor there. That piece of front bodywork. Goodness me. Anyway, that's
8.5 for a poor landing.
A pretty bad moment, I'm afraid, and a monstrous outbreaking of themselves. But either way, that's a couple of moments of action that those drivers would probably rather forget. But Velez, I think I'm trying to work out where he is in the field. He's only just made his way in now. I think he drove round, which is well, I suppose probably a bit quicker, but not much. And so he's very much out of contention for this race. Couldn't quite work out really from that angle whether Velez was the one turning across Fernandez or whether Fernandez was the one turning into Velez, but I think it was the latter, and that's why I say that I think Fernandez will get a penalty.
Yeah, they usually take a dim view on any sort of contact, especially one that results in a wreck like that. But This is why the race control has a chance to really focus and look at it. We have to keep watching the racing that's going on out on track, including back with the 11 of Kevin Jokel. And he's still got Neville kind of showing himself in the mirrors coming down into turn one. That does not look like a serious attempt. Kevin knows it, and he'll chop him off at the apex.
I think Jokel has been very good at keeping his eyes forward so far in this race, actually, and not worrying about those behind him, because he knows that they're not really posing too big of a threat to him. He knows that they are going to be backing out of those moves 9 times out of 10, and so he's just taking the risk of taking his lines anyway. And when you do that as a driver and you focus less on the mirrors, of course you do need to have an eye on your mirrors and make sure you give room to someone who's making a legitimate attempt. But those half-hearted lunges, you don't need to give room for. You can just take your line, and if you can just ignore those, keep your eyes forward, then you'll surprise yourself with just how much time that you gain, because the time that you lose when you're mirror driving, as it's called in the business, is monstrous. So if you can keep your eyes forward, you'll be doing just fine, and that's what Kevin Jokel's doing right now, to keep his eyes forward on making that pass on John Gibson in 7th place.
And so is Neville, who we ride on board with currently. He's not completely out of the woods himself. Lacroix behind could be a bit of an issue in and of itself. Now coming onto the main straight, this is where we saw Neville take a big look down into turn one. Will he be able to do the same? And it doesn't look like it. He's not nearly close enough, although this time it's going to be Kevin who tries to play the mind games, and John Gibson does not take the bait.
Nope, he certainly doesn't, and it'll be 32 in towards turn number 1. 20 minutes to go, so there can only be a few more laps left until they have to make a pit stop here. I don't think there's been quite as much fuel saving as there was last night, where in hindsight they were lifting off all over the place. Jokel just lifts off a little bit earlier there to defend from Robert Neville, and John Gibson was under a bit of pressure there as well, as Jokel actually went very deep into the braking zone. But again, they stay single file, and the games really now do begin. So many of the drivers will be making pit stops, and we're approaching half of the field having done so. Certainly a third of the field have done so now, and it's going to be very busy on pit lane pretty shortly.
Seems most of them do want to try and wait till the last moment possible, and the fuel tank is nearly dry, to stop in quickly and take fuel. We mentioned earlier about Gerling taking that 6.8. Yeah, we're getting some confirmation from what few stops we have had that it's mostly between 11 and 12 seconds that many of the drivers have refueled, and it is all down to refueling, since they're unlikely to be taking tires, and tires won't be the long part of it anyways. Coming around now onto the main straight once again, and John Gibson retains that 7th place, but nobody is willing to blink yet to take their pit stop.
No, it's surprising me a little bit. Just an update, by the way, on Mario Gonzalez, who is the only one to have taken an early pit stop here. He is starting to lose his way in a lot of traffic here. Mike Matson is just ahead of him. If he can get past Matson, then he'll be back into a lot of clean air again, and he did utilise the clean air that he came out in initially to his advantage quite well. But I think that the 2 passes that he's had to make on Patrick Adamczyk and Mike Matson, eventually he will have to make, has maybe undone some of the progress he was making.
And that's the double-edged sword of pitting early that you have to watch out for. We'll see whether or not it works out for him pretty soon here, because everybody else will have to affect their stops at some point. Riding on board with Rob in the 718. And he's getting awful close at times, but now he's lost quite a few car lengths up to Neville just in front of him. He's going to have to try and close that back up if he wants to capitalize on any sort of failed attempt that Robert Neville might take.
Yeah, and you can see Lacroix quite a long way behind in 10th place, comparatively anyway, by this group's standards. And still with 18 minutes to go, they all continue on the circuit. Top 15 have yet to make pit stops. This is... I mean, it wasn't like this last night, unless I'm mistaken. I think the leaders did wait a very long time, but actually for the entire field to wait nearly 45 minutes is something we certainly didn't see.
They seemed to trickle in a little bit more yesterday,
yeah,
which surprises me, because I would think the pro class would be, you know, everybody had figured out the absolute best time to pit, and everybody would kind of cluster towards the same time. This one is a lot more like that than last night.
But I don't think there is a you know, the right way to do things in terms of this lap you have to pit and this is the quickest way to do it. I think it very much depends on your race situation. There's David Fernandez coming in. Probably could have done with that a few laps ago himself, to be honest, but he's way behind Mario Gonzalez, as you'd expect to see. Yeah, it's puzzling to me, really, because, you know, these drivers have so much opportunity with such a wide pit window to get out of the trains they're in, yet some of these guys have been stuck for nearly 45 minutes now, yet still they're doing exactly the same thing they've been doing for the last, 30 laps. It's bizarre, really.
Fernandez does come out in some pretty clear air, but he's quickly approaching another group of cars of Gregory, Leung, and Simon in front of them. Simon's already taken his stop, so has Gregory, and Leung has not. This is getting a little spicy now in this group we were watching before. In fact, it might get spicy down into turn 1 with Robert Neville getting another great bit of speed down the main straight, but then reconsiders by the time he hits the brakes.
Yeah, because you're never going to get the slipstream on the front straight there if you're pulling out to the left-hand side there. Jokel's always going to have the draft of John Gibson by staying on the racing line. He's never going to go defensive there in towards turn 1. Could give him the outside for 2, but now's a better chance. This is why turn 5 is such a better opportunity. Not least the braking zone itself, but the chance to get a good exit off of 3. Goodness, that was close. Robert Neville was aggressive because he very nearly went straight into the side of John Gibson. He just about avoided that, but he did brake late enough to force Kevin Jokel out wide. In hindsight, that was a well thought out move, but it could have very easily gone very wrong.
Yeah, I think that was an effective use of a dive bomb, if you will. Like you said, he sent that in as deep as you could. It was under control, but it kind of gave it gave no choice to Jokel. It was either you go wide or we're coming together, buddy. So it gave him the spot, and now he is up to 8th position. But this is just before we get to those pit stops. Yeah. Will anybody in this group come in this time? That's a no.
No, they all stay out again. They are taking a little bit of a wider line tonight, you're right, than they were last night. Just throwing me off a little bit as well. But yeah, just pose the question, why now? I mean, Robert Neville could have, I mean, it's easy for me to say, could have done that 10 minutes ago. Obviously, these moves do take a while to sort of work up for you. It's not like a Monza like we're going to see later on in the season where you're sort of waiting for the right lap to do your overtake. Here, you're sort of waiting for a lap for a chance. It's not quite, doesn't quite work the same, so it's easy for me to say could have done that earlier, but I mean, we're so close to the pit window. Surely a more effective way to go through would have been an early pit stop and oh dear, oh, that was close. Jokel there very nearly doing to Neville what Neville did to him a lap ago, but with far closer to disastrous consequences there.
Yeah, anything you can do, I think I can do better, but unfortunately not in this case. And that's almost cost him a position. Instead, it only cost him a few car lengths. We did have Scott Bowers pit in, so there's another driver, at least I think within the top 15, pitting in. Now, remember we were wondering which side race control would take on that incident between Fernandez and Velez? Fernandez has a black flag.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. It was a big crash, and from the angle I saw, I think it was in his fault, to be honest. Didn't see from as many angles as race control will have seen, obviously, but yes, we did see that crash, and I do believe that's the correct call as Lenny Holland makes the first of the pit stops from the top 10, really, and since Gonzalez anyway, and there's very little pressure on this stop.
I don't think Gonzalez is going to jump him. He was a little too far behind. And yeah, in fact, Holland's already on his way. Not settling for just one. He's going for a second one here as Neville. He's already caught up to Gibson. Is he going to do the same thing again? I don't think he's close enough, but then he did send it in quite deep last time, and no, he'll stay on the racing line.
Perfect for Holland, by the way. Oh!
He spun himself.
Oh, and Jokel spun as well. Jokel spun on the exit. So, well, I don't really know how that's happened, to be honest, but Robert Neville dropped behind Holland, and Jokel will have to re-emerge way after Neville here. That's a very awkward moment for the both of them as they lose out on loads of time.
Could have been that Jokel just got a little target fixation and maybe was rattled by that spin, but seemingly two unrelated incidents in the same corner as drivers go off. Two very good drivers at the same time, losing valuable positions. But that is a real boon to Robert Lacroix, who now moves up into 7th. He'll have to give a couple positions back later. Peter Sigourney also pitting in.
Now, this is the moment that Steve Cummins has been waiting for quite a while. Is Sigourney making his way in? Now, as you say, Holland was never going to be jumped by Mario Gonzalez, but I don't think that was the aim. I think Gonzalez was much more likely to be aiming for 2nd place, although with the few cars he's come out behind, like Jokel now he's right behind, I think he's going to struggle to get out ahead. There is the double incident, and you're right, I don't think they are related, somewhat miraculously.
It looks like Sigourney's heading out. Where is Gonzalez? He's too far behind. So Gonzalez not going to catch Sigourney on that one. In fact, it looks like he lost a fair bit of time to him.
It's slightly. Well, I'm not sure really whether he's benefited or not from this early pick.
Wasn't he right behind him before?
I feel like the whole group was a lot closer before, but now the group was actually just 3 when Sigourney came in, so it's very difficult to read whether Gonzalez actually lost anything, because while he was away and doing his laps, having pitted already, the group split apart and...
sorry to interrupt. Steve Komatch just went off. Our current leader, although he wouldn't be after the pit stops, just had an off coming up over the tunnel turn. The 210 is going to get it going. I think he miraculously avoided the wall, and that was all on his own.
That's a very weird one. I was expecting that to come sort of over the crest of the hill, if you like, into a spin, but he went from very early there, and they're all in by the looks of things. Comas is in as well. John Gibson looks like he's carried on, but for the most part, everybody into pit lane. So I think we're going to see Holland out in the lead again. That much is pretty much a given, but I think we're going to see Gonzalez in 4th place, if I'm not mistaken, by the time that everyone comes out. I think McKinney and Comas are both going to be ahead of him, but I think he's going to jump everyone else.
All right, let's watch and see. Drivers now starting to emerge. And Mario Gonzalez in 4th position. That's going to be a podium because John Gibson still needs to take his pit stop. We got some action here between Michael McKinney and David Palmer, although this is just lapping him. Yeah, okay, so Palmer's going to pull out of the way.
Yeah, so I said Gonzalez 4th place, not forgetting that Comas had just been off the road, so actually it would be 3rd place when Gibson pits in. You're absolutely correct. So it's probably, I would say it's been a success for Gonzalez, this early stop. After all, he's ahead of Sigourney, who was stuck behind for most of that opening stint, and he's ahead of a lot of drivers he might not have otherwise been ahead of after that pit stop phase. He's just got to hang on now for the remaining 10 minutes with lots of drivers stacked up behind. The gaps are pretty much 1 second from 3rd to 9th. They're all 1 second apart in intervals.
Certainly has spread things out. We often will see the pit stops do that. Of our quickest stops this time, the closest we're seeing is 8.8 for Mike Matson. So that's relatively close, but fewer getting down to there. Oh, excuse me, 8.5 for Neville in the 087 car. So very quick stop for him. And that gets him into 11th place.
Girling still going with that 6.8. Still waiting to see whether that's going to work. At 7.1 for James Martin last lap as well. That's a very short stop. But it could work. Maybe throughout the weeks we're just going to see shorter and shorter and shorter stops as everyone realises they need less and less fuel for this circuit that apparently uses no fuel whatsoever.
Gibson, where is he going to come out? Just ahead of Sigourney, I think, as we watch McKinney here in 2nd place up over turn 4. And with about 2 seconds over Mario Gonzalez back in 3rd position. So not really much going on at the front of the field, at least for the time being. Lenny Holland, his gap, man, it's 12.6 seconds right now.
Yeah, how impressive is that? A wonderful drive so far from Holland. Being chased, of course, by Michael McKinney, who I believe is going to have a better result in this race than he did throughout the entirety of last season. As far as I can work out, I think his best finishing position was 4th, maybe 5th last season, certainly not 2nd. So he's going to go better in just 1 round than he did all of last season this time round. But everyone's going to have to go to the drawing board in the next couple of weeks and work out how to beat Lenny Holland. It could be quite a tricky season if this is a marker of things to come.
No, we do have to remember that in between series, they will advance some drivers as they reevaluate their pace, and that's how they do these. Is they evaluate essentially pace over many races, kind of taking away the extremities of best and worst laps, and then kind of figure out where you lie amongst that. So that's what creates such close racing in each of the classes that they run here in PCA sim racing. And I wonder if maybe a few of the graduates moving up is maybe kind of open those doors for the 527 as we watch from Steve Komatz's view.
A little bit, but actually if you look at the standings from last season, then a lot of the drivers who were here one season ago are back again. In fact, I can see, 6 of last season's top 10 still here in the season. As you say, it's very much not a sort of promotion system where you get in the top whatever and you go up a league, as it were. It's not soccer, but it is pace based, as you say, and that means that certain drivers will go through even if they've not had a very good season look wise, racing wise, and pace wise. They can vault through into the pro standings, but actually a lot of them are still remaining here. Terence Tong, for example, was only 6 points away from winning the whole season earlier this year, but as you can see, he is still here in the club category.
And honestly, it is definitely consistency that wins, as it does in many championships here in PCA. Steve kind of putting the pressure on where he can with Peter Kumar in front of him, try to get this 4th place away. He's at least within range that he can see his rival. He just isn't close enough to try and attack quite yet. He's got just a couple laps left. He's going to have to get up on the wheel if he wants to try and make a move here as we step a little farther back. Looks like we got a fight down into turn 1 between Bowers and Tong.
Yeah, Bowers, the one applying the pressure here. You can see in the red, and Tong in the pink Porsche that we can't remember the name of, in 13th place. I'm sure someone will let us know afterwards, and we can correct ourselves for the future. But out through turn 4 they go, and Tong should have this place relatively okay this lap around. Just want to comment, by the way, on the driver in front of them, JR Gregory, one of the earliest pit stops. In fact, the earliest pit stop inside the top 20 for JR Gregory. It's done wonders for him, clearly, because we didn't speak about him in the first part of the race. He was way down when he made his stop. He's come out in 12th.
Excellent work there, up 17 from where he started this one. I did a quick Googling, so I cheated a bit, but it is Roxy is apparently the pink one. So
okay,
there we go. Don't know what the yellow one is, though.
I wonder, I was going to say, I wonder how many colours they can go through before they start to run out of names for these teeth-based Porsches.
Matson currently running in 17th position, up 5 for him. He's trying to catch up to Lee Binkley, who's up 7 himself. Both have been having decent days out there, at least on a net positive for this race. The red and black 02 just trying to keep on his line, not trying to get phased by that number 6 filling his mirrors.
Yeah, and of course easier said than done to achieve that, but made a little bit easier by the fact that there are just less than 4 minutes to go. I believe a few laps as well. It sort of depends where the leader is. Again, these guys in the field at the moment are around, where are they? Just under a minute off the leader, so that gives you an idea of just how difficult it will be for them to work out how many laps they've got remaining. For Matson, it's just about how can I work a way through at the earliest opportunity, really, rather than worrying about how many laps there are remaining. You've just got to look at the driver in front of you, look at a way of making a move here, and try and execute it in the minutes you've got remaining, because it's too late in the race now to think further ahead than that. Just think about the position ahead of you, and that's about it.
Looks like 3 laps to go because Lenny just crossed the line now. And watching this fight once again, heading along the backside of the course. This is a very tricky entry here coming into the tunnel turn. It compresses heavily and then car goes light up over this hill, called the tunnel turn because that is where they have one of the tunnels to the inside of the track. Very few of them actually, since it doubles back on itself so much.
Yeah, I was saying yesterday, it doesn't go over a very big plot of land, this circuit, but it does make use of the land that it does have, and switching back, and it's, as you can see perfectly there, cars travelling in 3 different directions, all in the space of a few hundred metres. So it's a remarkable facility, a great track to go racing at, especially to go driving at. As I was saying yesterday, I feel like these cars, it's sort of GT3 Porsche Cup level style car, is well suited to this kind of track. Not too quick like I believe the IndyCars to be for this circuit, to be honest with you, and they can still provide that good racing as well as we've seen so far tonight. And maybe there are a couple more passes before we go as well.
And I got to tell you, yeah, this year was the first year I'd gotten to go to this track in person. It's definitely worth visiting. A beautiful facility. And honestly, definitely one of my favorite commentary boxes, because you can see a whole bunch of the track from that front straightaway because of the layout that they put together here. But right now, all that Gonzalez can see is the rear wing of Michael McKinney. And he has about 2 laps to try and put that out of his windscreen, but question is, can he get close enough to do so?
It's starting to run out of time, really. I believe there'll be a couple of laps here because of Lenny Holland's pace. We are going to have the same amount of laps as we did in the pro race yesterday, but obviously at a slightly slower time, if you like. So Gonzalez is going to have a couple of chances, but this is going to be pretty tricky. I think McKinney is going to have to make a mistake, I think, to lose this second place, but that was a bit deep on the brakes in towards turn 5. Gonzalez has got to seize one of these chances here, get a lot closer than this, get the best run possible out of turn 3 and see what happens. There's not much hope other than that.
McKinney's had a pretty good race there, going up from 5th at the start to looking at a 2nd place finish. But man, he has been outdone by Peter Krumer behind them. Started in 10th, looking at a 4th place finish. He's really done a phenomenal job at the sharp end of the field. As we said, it's always harder once you get up to the top to try and make that many overtakes, let alone any around here. Just not quite close enough is Mario Gonzalez. His white flag is being held aloft just now for Lenny Holland.
Yep, so a lap of honour for Lenny Holland more than anything else, and a fully deserved victory coming his way, but behind a battle for 2nd place. Michael McKinney with just enough at the moment. I think Gonzalez needed to be a bit quicker on that lap if he really wanted to consider a move. Now he needs to cut from through turn number 1, dive in towards turn number 2, and then straighten out the exit for 3. There he goes. You can see him going a little bit wider. He needs to swoop in now, absolutely plant it and go out of turn 3. But McKinney has done a decent job. It's going to have to be very brave on the brakes for the 777.
Just not close enough. He is going to send it anyways, but all it does is get him a little bit closer coming down to the apex. Could still maybe have a few desperate opportunities later on, but he's going to have to be mighty close to that pink bumper if he wants to try and take this position. That's one of them right there, down through Museum Corner. He's not close enough for that one. Maybe into 14. Yeah. You can sometimes do the New Garden line and snooker up the inside.
Yeah, that's your last chance, and that's reserved for the last lap more than anything else. He's got a great run through 9 and 10, though. Look at this, side by side on the way to 11.
Oh, he gets a little bit of overlap, but he forces him off the track, and he's going to be able to take it anyways. And we have to tuck away from this at the last moment because Lenny Holland is coming to the line, and the 68 takes a dominant victory with the club class here today.
Fantastic drive from Lenny Holland, and a perfect reward for an exhibition of a drive. Likes to flag pole position to victory as Mario Gonzalez does get 2nd place. A perfect exhibition from him in offensive driving and forcing your rival to make a mistake. That was a fantastic final lap between those two.
Oh, wonderful stuff. McKinney's going to be kicking himself for sure, but still a 3rd place is a great run from the 5-2-7 car. Richard Woodruff as well. 7 places up from 13th to finish in 6th. That is a mighty fine run. We're watching Fernandez. He's still down in 18th, 11 places lost. Jokel up in front of him, also down 13 places. This is not the beginning of the season they were looking for.
No, it isn't, but there's still a long way to go, of course. A drop round as well. If you are going to have a very good season, you can afford to get rid of one of your rounds, so that will help them along. But nearly a minute off of the leader. Not the way you'd want to start your season, of course, but at least they have got to the end, unlike a few of the drivers. They've unfortunately had to make a couple of stops. Even those that have had the most damage today, though, like Julian Velez, for example, have got to the end. So I believe we've just seen 31 of the 33 crossing the line after having not too many problems. That's 2 retirements, as we had yesterday. Very good retirement rate so far.
Absolutely. Also, I'm going to borrow from Peter Mackay a little bit here. I think we need a Frugal Scotsman award for Adam Gerling. 6.8 seconds, and he made it all the way to the finish. That is unbelievable how much he sipped the fuel. Was 23rd, which is not bad, but obviously maybe a bit of pace could have helped. But we'll go over that in a moment. As here is their finishing order, with Lenny Holland taking the win, 13 seconds by the end of this race over Mario Gonzalez, who beat Michael McKinney with a pass on the last lap. It was Peter Kummer in 4th, with Steve Komatz finishing P5. Richard Woodruff, as we mentioned, a lot of positions gained to get into the top 10 here, as John Gibson finishes 7th and Peter Sigourney was P8. Robert Lacroix was 9th today, and then Ian Simon gets himself a top 10. Robert Neville in the action there at the end. He'll take P11. J.R. Gregory with the most positions gained of 17 to finish 12th. Terrence Tong 13th and Scott Bowers 14th. Then it is Kevin Jokel P15 and Mike Matson in 16th. Lee Binkley will take P17, while David Fernandez is behind him in 18th. Jeremy Hall 19th and Ben Leon in the 20th spot. Julian Velez, not going to be happy about that one. He had some help to send him back to 21st. Patrick Adamczyk was 22nd, and Adam Gerling sipping on the fuel, finished 23rd today. Chris Sherburne was 24th, Kim Fricke in 25th. And it's David Glenn in P26, James Martin 27th, and Dale Green in 28th. Ward Preston finished 29th today, followed by David Palmer in 30th. And just a couple more cars here, as Dean Chapman was our last to finish in 31st. Then it's Elsom and Lacombe. Unfortunately, not seeing the checkered flag today. Looks like we've got Lenny Holland ready to talk to us. So let's have a little bit of a chat with the number 68 driver, Lenny. It looked like things were well under control up at the front. Did it feel that way inside the cockpit?
Yeah, it was great. It was a good race. These are some good guys. It was a fun race, so a little hard to stay concentrated. I think a few people behind me may have made some mistakes and made me look better than I really am.
Well, you take what you can get. You opted towards the late pit stop strategy, as most everybody did on this one, but you still pitted a little earlier than some of your rivals. What was your philosophy on this? Were you trying to run it dry, or did you reach a point where you thought you had a gap behind you?
No, I was out of gas. I had to stop.
Simple enough then. After this, we'll head off to Brands Hatch, and it's going to be another track where you'll want to put it on pole and see if you can try and run away, although it's another very, very short lap. Do you think the similarities will kind of help you pull a similar victory?
I don't know. I hear it's going to be raining there, so I'm not sure what's going to become of that.
Raining in England? Surely you jest.
I must be. I just want to thank Matrix Motorsports for helping me out as much as they have. The PCA for putting this whole thing on. Those guys, everybody does a great job. And you guys, the announcers, we absolutely love it. I don't think we thank you enough. So we definitely appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you very much. That's Lenny Holland, our winner here today, with an impressive 13-second gap come the end of the race. That takes us to Mario Gonzalez, and Ewan O'Leary has caught up with the man that pulled a very sneaky move to take that P2.
Exactly. Welcome, Mario. Good to have you with us. And let's start with that move at the very end of the race. We were following you on the final lap. We were enjoying the battle between yourself and Michael McKinney there. Tell us about that last lap from your perspective. We don't seem to have a copy of Mario for the moment. Mario, can you hear us? It doesn't sound like it, does it? We'll have to leave him to the end. If he's got some mic issues or whatever, we'll have to leave him to the end. And start doing Michael McKinney now instead. Is that all right?
Yeah, go for it.
Let's do it. We'll bring Michael McKinney and see if we have any more luck. Welcome in, Michael. Can you hear us, and can we hear you, more importantly?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Oh, excellent. I think Mario Gonzalez is just trying to sort his microphone out. That battle at the end between yourself and Mario was very entertaining for us, but I'd imagine it is attached with a little bit of disappointment for yourself now that we finished the race. Tell us about the final lap from your perspective.
Oh, it was a lot of fun. A little bit of disappointment, but not much really. I'm just glad I didn't take Mario out when I was mowing the lawn. I just, I came around the last series of corners and I messed up the chicane, and then Mario was right there, and then I just couldn't hold him off. He was racing a great race. It was a lot of fun.
I mean, what was the race like overall? I mean, Barber, to me, didn't suggest lots of overtaking opportunity and whatever, but there was a decent amount of it from our perspective. But how did your race unfold in terms of, or in relation to your plan for the race and how you expected it to go?
It went well. I've been coached by Leif Peterson and Chris Pies, and it's basically get out there and run your race. So I wanted to qualify as best as I could. I got up P5. I thought that was a strong for me, and then got a clean start. And then we just kind of got in line for a little bit. I made a couple of passes, and there was a little bit of attrition, and then it was just run consistently. I knew if I could save a little bit of fuel, if I could go a little bit longer, there's a chance that I could potentially overcut some people, but it was just drive consistent, try to stay out of trouble until the last lap, obviously. But it was a lot of fun. You're right. There's not a lot of passing opportunities, and I didn't want to take a lot of unnecessary risk.
If you're going to be coached by anybody as well, by the way, those are two good names, aren't there? That's for sure. Is there anyone you'd like to thank before we let you go?
Yeah, certainly. I definitely want to thank the Imperial Motorsports guys, Chris, Leif, Quinn, Dean, all the guys over there. Then definitely my family, my wife Amanda, Max, Abby, Kelly, and David. A lot of my family is listening today and watching the broadcast. Love the broadcast, guys, and really looking forward to Series 12.
Thanks very much. Congratulations on second place, and thanks for third place, excuse me. Well, rubbing it in, aren't I? Sorry. Third place, and thanks for coming to chat to us as well.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Michael McKinney there, third place tonight, not second. I feel slightly bad for rubbing that in, really, but there we go. Oh, dear. Yeah, third place for him.
All right, let's give one more try at Mario here, see if we can have a chat with him and see if he can get his mic unmuted. But Mario, do you have a copy? Unfortunately, it looks like we are not going to get to chat with Mario, which is a real shame because I'd love to hear both his side of things and talk to one of the few drivers that stopped very early in comparison to everybody else. But I guess we'll maybe have to get a chat with him on some other night. So speaking of other nights, we'll be back in a little less than a week's time. Join us Wednesday night, September 11th, for the Sport Class back here at Barber once again. And a big thank you goes to the steering committee at PCA Sim Racing, as well as our team tonight, Ewan and Hugo. Thank you so much for watching tonight's broadcast of PCA Sim Racing. I'm Joe Peak. Race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.